Can I have your attention, please? We'll be starting up shortly. Good evening and welcome to the Lowell Planning Board for January 23rd, 2014. Tonight we do have one public hearing on, and this is a continuation for the Wood Street project. The matter came before us on the last few meetings, and last time we were here in January, approximately 2 weeks ago, on January 6th, we had a new set of plans. We had some comments addressed on those matters, and the matter was continued over to address some of the new set of plans that were given us that evening, give a chance for the traffic engineer, for the applicant wasn't present. And we had some speakers who spoke that night, Brenda Maley, attorney, and also John Ham from Technical Neighbor Association, and people from the applicant. So here we're today for continuation. I'll read the advertisement. It's a site plan review for 150 Wood Street, and as indicated, this was continued from our last meeting on January 6th. The Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing to hear all interested persons relative to the application by Kazanton Enterprise seeking site plan review for development located at the above address. The proposal consists of 2 new commercial buildings, preservation of an existing residential building, and construction of a parking lot with access from Wood Street and Westford Street. The proposed project is located in a suburban mixed-use zoning district and requires site plan review with the planning board under section 11.42 of the Lowell zoning ordinance. May we hear the case of the applicant, please?
Members of the board, my name is Attorney Gregory Curtis. I'm here on behalf of the developer, Kazanton Enterprise, and this is a continuation from the meeting we had last, I think it was January 6th. Since that time, we've made numerous changes on the plan and also had several meetings with the planning and development and received input from the traffic department, the engineering department, and planning and development to try to meet all the needs that the project requires to go forward. Also tonight, we have Ken Cram was able to make it, the traffic engineer, and we have members from the president of the Lowell 5, Dave Wallace, and Amy Garabedian, the vice president of real estate for Lowell 5, which would be the anchor tenant at the location if we were able to get this through the process. So I wanted to try to address and speak about some of the particulars that were concerns at the last meeting regarding the the Bowers House. We plan, of course, on keeping that at the current location. There's indication in Aaron Clausen's comments that we want to be able to maintain that. That is the intention of the developer. It's not going to be in the condition it is now, but we will be maintaining it in the condition prior to eventually doing work to it to make it a viable property, whether it be for office space or continue as residential. But the house and the barn, the intention is to work with Steve Stoll from the Historic Commission, not requiring us to go to the Historic Board. It's not an historic district, but we would work hand in hand with Steve to make sure that whatever is completed on that house would be done in course with the intention to do a restoration on it and keep it in the condition that would be adequate for a house of that character and type. With regards to engineering and traffic, Ken Cram is here. We can discuss that, but I think one of the issues I think we all had time to discuss was that we need to have that ingress and egress, left-hand and right turn out onto Wood Street. And looking at the letter from Lisa DeMayo from the engineering department, there is going to be substantial work that the city's going to be preparing to do in the springtime, putting in curbing, putting in a sidewalk on the opposite side of Wood Street, and also the widening with the land taking that is proposed for Westford Street and the land taking on Wood Street. So we feel with the ability to have the proper traffic signals and proper striping, that any safety concerns would be addressed, that we would be able to meet those, and that the ability to turn into the property coming westerly or southerly on Wood Street into the project with a turn lane would work, and also being able to access taking a right turn out of the project onto Wood Street, of course. Also would be, we were discussing the ability to have the entrance on Westford Street. I myself went past the project again this evening around 5:15 just to see what that situation was like with traffic on a cold winter night on a Thursday. And we're looking to have a left-hand turn out onto Westford Street, also a right-hand turn. We feel that, and Ken would be able to comment this further, but we feel that that would be viable for the project going forward, to allow people to exit. Most times of the day, you don't have a traffic issue at that point. At 5 o'clock or at rush hour, it's a little busier, but we'd like to have that ability to make a left turn out of the project, proposed project, out onto Westford Street. I think you've looked at some of the renderings of the buildings. We tried to make a few changes on that second commercial building with putting on the peaks, and also having a brick face on the building on two sides, and then the back side and the side facing the Bowers home would be a clapboard type of siding. So Conservation meeting happened last night. Things seem to go well at Conservation. There don't seem to be too many issues regarding that. I think the biggest issues we need to discuss, a few items inside the development, sidewalks coming across and entering the development, some striping and paving, and how we're going to handle that. Also, the sight line that you have to deal with coming down Wood Street, to have a sight line and elevations, which I'll let the engineers talk about. But I think we've tried to meet most of the items that were listed. We can go through them all. I don't see many issues. There may be a few more tweaks we have to make to that plan regarding some crosswalks that have to be shown at Westford and Wood Street. But other than that, I think we have a real good project that's had a lot of input from planning and development and the other departments, and will make a fantastic development for that area and improve the area, and also with the help of the city to improve the safety and the traffic of that area with striping, lines, lighting, and signaling. So at this point, I'll turn it over to the board to ask questions, and also to talk to the engineers more specifically about items they'd like to discuss.
Mr. Curtis, what I'd like, if we could do, is if we could go through the list that was given to us by Mr. Clausen, one at a time.
Sure.
Then once we finish that, I'd like to go over the comments we received from the city engineer. And after we do that, I'd like to go over the comments from Mr. Eby, because you have your city traffic, you have your engineer here, and then we have Mr. Eby here. So after you address these three comments that were given to us,
Okay, so
then at that point in time, I am gonna ask Mr. Eby to state his concerns after you address those. I'm gonna ask Mr. Clausen to state his concerns after you address those. And then at that point in time, I'm gonna turn it over to the public. So if we could start with Mr. Aaron Clausen's checklist. That way we'll know
So we'll-
what you're on board with and what you're not on board with. And that way
Indicating-
gives the board consideration of what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do in regards to the request by Mr. Clausen and staff.
Starting with number one on his list, the entire site, of course, is a vegetated area, and we're talking about tree removal and trees that should be planted. I don't think we have any issues with trees that need to be replanted and the type of trees that the planning department has asked us to look into. I don't think we have any issues with that. My client, Alan Kazanjian, is here and can add to all that, but I don't think we have any issues with replanting of trees and the locations. We may have to change a few locations because of sidewalks and crosswalks, but I think we can work at that. Number two, trees with caliber of 12 inches or greater, shown on the drainage plan. Again, this is a Caltech system that the drainage runs into, and I'm not an engineer, but hopefully that can be worked out so that shade trees can be located in those areas, and that the DDS staff can, review that prior to removing any large trees. Stormwater pollution control, again, we went to the Conservation Commission. If there's questions regarding that, again, that's an engineering question. I think city engineering department would have to approve all that prior to any installation, so that normally would be an engineering
doesn't
issue.
that have to be submitted for the NPDES construction permit?
Excuse me, yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, Alan Kazanjian Enterprise. Yes, if the project does get approved, we will be submitting that for that permit.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right. So number three wouldn't be a problem, then you're in agreement with that then? If it gets
Correct.
approved,
No.
submit that for the permit. Okay, thank you.
On number four, the signage, again, normally, we hopefully could get the signage approved through the planning, but we're happy to work with the Department of Planning and Development on the type of signage, the height of the signage, and if we have to go through the Board of Appeals on that, we could do that, but everybody wants to put this together as a sign that is complementing the area and is a gateway sign. When people come down from Drum Hill area, they're going to be looking directly at the sign at that intersection of Westford and Wood. So we want to make sure that sign is appeasing to not only the city, but works for the potential retailers and the bank that is there, and I'm sure we can work with the DPD for that. If it has to be done at a later date, that's not an issue that I think we have any problem with. Regarding 5, traffic, if you want to discuss traffic now, we can bring traffic engineer, or we can skip over that and get to the
Yeah, we
traffic.
can skip number 5. I
Okay.
think that goes in general. We can pick that up later. So, okay, if we can go to number 6, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, regarding consideration requiring applicant to construct the sidewalk as part of the proposed project to improve pedestrian access, we want to make sure that, the sidewalk is being provided by the city on the opposite side, on the west side of Wood Street, all the way from I think the corner of Princeton Boulevard. It's going to run all the way up to the intersection where Westford and Wood. Now, on the opposite side, they're planning on putting in curbing. And we don't anticipate that, and we don't feel that there should be any sidewalk on the project side, on the easterly side, for one reason, main reason, is that the sidewalk would end at a dead end at basically the Bowers property. There's no sidewalk that runs from the Bowers property, the old house, down to Wood Street. So if you were to put a sidewalk in at that location, I think you're just inviting problems from two. You have a lot of traffic flow coming down and making that sort of sharp turn to get to Wood Street, and you'll have access, pedestrian access on the opposite side, and you can control the access of the people that on foot traffic coming up to the light at Westford, and then at that point pushing a signal control button to stop the lights and allow for pedestrian access across into the development. So we don't suggest, and I think the engineer agreed, that we should have any type of sidewalk to encourage people to be walking on both sides of Wood Street and ending up at a point at the entranceway or at the Bowers home, and then finding they can't go any further and walking out and trying to cross the street at a location where there's no crosswalk. So we will have, and we do agree with the city that the access and the handicap ability access at Wood Street and Westford Street would both be the safest place for pedestrians to cross, and that we're willing to work with the city to install the two ramps and items that are needed for the Westford Street access and for the Wood Street access at that corner where Westford and Wood are, and where the traffic control signals are now located, and where the pedestrian crosswalks would be put in. We're also work with the city as time goes on when they're out there ready to start construction. If we go on to number 7, building elevations, perspective drawings. We did a revision on the plan. I think the building is a much better looking building, and with the brick face and the gables on the bank building and on the retail building, it complements the area with the brick and the size of the building and the location and the way we have, at the last meeting, we turned the building so that the narrowest part of the building is facing out to Wood Street, and the longer part goes back towards the wooded area in the rear. I think the engineer is here. We can come back to that on elevations for the faces and the facades on the bank building, and to go over some of the other improvements. Again, talking about the Bowers home, we're willing, our intention all along was to keep that building at the site. And eventually that building, it's been there for many, many years. If it's going to be used as any type of retail type of office or even a residential home, it's going to need renovations, and we're willing to get the input from the experts, from Steve Stoll and the experts at the Historic Board, to make sure that when that comes about, and it may be done simultaneously with the project being built or just afterwards. We don't want to leave a property in any type of state of disrepair when we're building this elaborate and expensive and new structure. We want to make sure that that Bowers home is going to complement what's there, and that is sort of the centerpiece of this Bowers corner, as they're going to call it. So I think maintenance is something we always look to do. I don't think we're going to allow that building to deteriorate. If there is specific things that need to be done, I haven't been in the building, I think my client has, but if there are specific things regarding roofing or fixing roofing or siding or chimneys, those will all be done. And if this is going to get to a point where that's going to be occupied by a business or a residence, it's going to have to be completely weather-tight and in good shape. And if anything, it will be a vast improvement over what's there now. It's had some additions put on it over the course of time, and hopefully we can retain the structure as it is with the barn, and just repair it and, as I say, waterproof it, rain, drainage systems, all those will be addressed as the project moves forward. If I skip over number 9, because we were talking about that, any critical work we would do right away if we had a serious problem presented to us there. I'd like to go down to, skip down to number 11. Landscaping along Wood and Westford Street. Shade trees, we have no problem with the shade trees, and we have no problem with the selection of the type of trees that the Department of Planning and Development has given to us. We just want to make sure that, and we can work with them, that this Caltech system that we're putting in is not going to be interfered with by large growing trees over the years. I'm not an expert on that. The engineers know better, and I'm sure Aaron can indicate what is the best scenario for that. But we have no problem with planting shade trees or the type provided for the area. If you've been by the area, there are some large trees on the site, but there's also a mix of all weed trees or Norwegian maples and just scrub that has grown up over the years. A lot of that's most of that is all gonna come down. But if there are, any specific items that needed to be addressed, I think Aaron called that any tree over 12 inches in diameter, we want to get some input from DPD as to what to do with that and how it's going to affect the site. We look at number 12, the area west of the access drive from Westford Street and labeled parcel B should be landscaped, including shade trees of substantial size, not less than 8 trees. I'm trying to visualize that in my head, but I think it's that western portion that is the northern corner of
It's a little strip of
Westford
land
and Wood.
We just got from the city. It's a little strip,
The strip?
a little strip of land.
Okay.
Yep.
The area west of the access drive, so that is that strip of land, parcel B, landscaped, shade trees. We don't have an issue with that. That could be one of the requirements in a decision, or we'll work again. We've been working, with DEPD right along with this, and we can work with them to make sure that types and species provided below are installed in that location. Again, no issues with, I think, 13 the same way. I think there's one issue with a crosswalk that would be coming across on Westford Street from Wood Street to the project at the corner of Westford and Wood. There's probably going to be an entranceway that's going to bring the walkway into the project. So I don't know if it's shown on there as a sidewalk coming in, but we want to make sure that we have access. People crossing at that location will be able to access into the project with then crosswalk striped on the parking area to get over to the walkways that would bring you into the specific buildings. So I don't know if that was on the plan, but that will be added to the plan, and we'll work with Aaron and DPD on putting that in a location which would be accessible from both points, from the Westford Street side and, of course, from people coming across. The main flux of pedestrian, any type of foot traffic is going to come from across Wood Street and across a crosswalk, and hopefully end up right at a sidewalk entrance coming into the project. Again, 15, talking about sugar maples or other types of species.
And the sugar maples, that's what the conservation required, and they approved that last night with the sugar maples, so that's why we have the sugar maples on that plan.
So, a lot of the things to do with the landscaping, which is, I think, coming down from 11 through 15, you're willing to work with staff on those matters, and the same thing with signage, right?
We really don't have any issues with those, Mr. Chairman. I think most of those can be addressed, and it's a matter of sitting down with the Department of Planning and Development on those and determining
through the
what
list,
works.
So basically, going through the list, the only thing that you haven't approved, basically, you had the issue with the sidewalk on number 6, and number 5, you said we'd talk about the transportation impact later. So besides that,
Right.
all the other stuff, they're agreeable. Am I correct? Okay.
And if we
So,
want to go forward to the paving, the engineering
yes, if you
letter?
could, Attorney Curtis, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, so Lisa DeMayo indicated in her letter of January 21st, talking about the work and the project of paving Wood Street from Westford Street to Middlesex. And it's been part of the plan since last year, work to include sidewalks on the west side of the street and restoring the detection system and the traffic lights. So hopefully they'll be putting in a system as is normally installed, where it's going to detect the flow of traffic and also control the flow of traffic. I think one of the best items listed there is the curbing. When they put in the new sidewalk, they're going to extend that curbing all the way up around after they widen the road, and it's going to be a great benefit to keeping the sidewalk in good order, and also for stormwater runoff and protection from erosion that comes down off of either across the street or where we are. The third paragraph down about the project plan will add granite curbing on the applicant's side. Again, we encourage that. I think that's going to be a great plus, but any construction of a sidewalk there, I think, unless the city was willing to bring that sidewalk all the way down to Middlesex Street, or not Middlesex Street, but I think that's Princeton Boulevard, I think it doesn't make any sense to add a sidewalk that stops at the end of our project and goes nowhere. I think it's only encourage, it's a safety issue, and any foot traffic that wants to come up to that development will be able to be on a sidewalk along those apartments on Wood Street, up to the light, and there'll be a signal control there with a button to allow people to stop traffic so that they can cross onto a sidewalk and into a sidewalk that would enter onto the property with the proper striping. We don't really have any issue with striping. I think the city council is hopefully voted, I wasn't here last week, but voted to include the parcel swap, and that if that has to be included on the permitting, we can certainly include that on the permitting because the project.
It was approved.
That was approved, okay. And the striping, we really don't have any issue with any of the striping. We want this to be a project that is, of course, safety first, whether it's striping for crosswalks, it's striping for lane indicators, line striping, and even the striping that's going to be done inside our project for showing crosswalks and, all that. We would be inclined to do all that type of striping that's necessary. And we also talked about the last paragraph about the ramps, including new wheelchair ramps at the four corners. The two corners that are on Westford and Wood, we would be taking care of those installations and whatever the requirements are for meeting that. I think they have the rubber pad on them and they're handicap accessible to make the grade up the sidewalk. Those will be installing, so we have no problem with being responsible to install the ramps on the corner of the intersection that abuts the property. Was there a third page on that? I think is that the end of that letter, that one
I believe
page?
so. I believe that is, council, yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. No, I think we should bring up at this time Ken Cram. He is the traffic engineer, and we can switch over to Mr. Eby's letter of January 22 regarding the traffic matters.
Thank you, council.
Good evening. Ken Cram from Bayside Engineering, and I am the traffic engineer for the project. And I just want to go back to one thing. I heard about the landscaping and the trees along Wood Street, and the only caveat I would add that when we put those trees in, whatever they end up being, that we make sure that they are set back enough so that they don't affect sight distances at the site driveway intersection. But I have Mr. Eby's memorandum from yesterday, January 22nd, and point number one, we both agree upon. The conceptual improvement plan shows that we can get a left turn lane in Wood Street in the geometry that the city has proposed, and that'll be a great benefit for everybody. Number two, the sight lines. Mr. Eby has asked for a profile. I have started a draft of a profile based on a number of survey information and GIS data. I want to say publicly a thanks to Peter Maloney from DPD. He was very helpful in getting me a lot of information that helped us put together some information and recent survey. So we do have a site profile that has been done. I haven't had a chance to share it with Eric yet, but it does show that we do have some sight distance which is a definite improvement over what we had before. Third point, Mr. Eby raises a good point in his letter about a single-unit truck, what we call an SU-30, allowing it to be able to turn right, turn in without impacting going over the center line. We as traffic engineers, we have these templates. I know you can't see it, but there are little red lines on this see-through piece of plastic here. We laid that on the plan, and it's a simple fix. We can increase the incoming radius to 28 feet, and we will easily do that. And that way, a single-unit truck can easily make a right turn into the site. This type of development does not foster a demand for 18-wheelers coming to and from the site. I can't say there never will be an 18-wheeler coming to the site, but possibly, if someone were to take the entire 6,300 square foot building and they had to move a lot of stuff in, that's a once-in-a-lifetime event, so to speak. But we do design it so that an SU-30 now can get in safely. Point number 4, the city is willing to undertake the repaving, widening, curbing, and sidewalk installation along Wood Street. And this represents a significant impact to the developer, yes. And Mr. Eby's next few points go to, what can we do with some of that money, so to speak. The city is going to be fixing the existing detection that's out there. Right now we have what we call loop detectors. They're in the pavement. They're coils of metal that basically wire, actually, that sends a vehicle and tells the signal, okay, there's a car waiting, time to go green. What Mr. Eby has asked for is that we do video detection at the intersection, which better controls the flow versus loop detectors. It can help the signal operate better, and ultimately what it also does is it helps reduce queues on all approaches by operating better. I agree with him, and we'll get to the end, I'll say what we're going to do. Point number 6, in terms of the vehicle detection upgrade, he's asked for pedestrian heads and signal push buttons for the crosswalk that'll go across Wood Street. And I agree, and we will do that. Point number 7, as Mr. Curtis had explained, where the ped ramp will be, at the intersection itself, we will add, which is not shown on the plan, a sidewalk that'll go across to the bank building with a driveway with a crosswalk going across the aisle so pedestrians have some safety, and extend the sidewalk in front of the bank building to meet the two so that the pedestrians don't have to walk. Once they're on the site, they know where they have to go by following either the sidewalks or the crosswalks. Point number 8, apparently, and sometime in the past, there was a single vehicle crash where it wiped out the controller and damaged it. The cabinet, the equipment is functioning properly inside, but Mr. Eby added this to his wish list that we give him a new cabinet, and I think, the liability and insurance should probably cover that. I don't think we should be responsible for something that someone else damaged. And then lastly, the pavement markings shown on the plan be installed by the project proponent after the city completes the roadway widening. The previous letter, Lisa DeMayo's letter, said they will be replacing the striping that's there today. We're responsible for our striping, which basically affects from about 50 or 100 feet south of our driveway on Wood Street to the end of the project because it creates the taper and so forth for the left turn lane. Yes, I agree, we should be responsible for that. On those cost items, I've also talked with Electric Light, which is the city's supplier for electrical equipment and so forth for traffic signals. And those all add up to about $25,000 worth of improvements. And my client has indicated that he's willing to give the city $25,000 to implement it. And I think that's probably one of the best ways to do it. If the city is going to do all the construction, it makes sense to have only one person doing the construction. You get two entities involved doing the construction. Left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing sometimes, or the schedules don't always coincide. This way, if the city does it, they know they have the money coming from the client, it's a lot easier and it's a lot cleaner to be done. And the last one, item number 10, bullet number 10, right turn only sign is needed at the Westford Street driveway facing exiting vehicles, and a do not enter sign is needed at the driveway facing Westford Street. We would like to try and keep this driveway open. It just helps with the site circulation. I know there are concerns for left turns in or left turns out, but I think the left turns in are really not so much of an issue because there is adequate room. We went out there and field measured ourselves. There's adequate room for 2 cars, 1 car waiting to make a left turn in and 1 car to get by. So the left turns in, I would argue that we could easily keep that. But I will defer to Mr. Eby as we discuss this as we move forward. And that summarizes our responses to Mr. Eby's comments.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Eric, if he could make some comments on what was made by the traffic engineer. I think, Eric, on the first page, they were in agreement on everything, except for number 3 on the bullet. They talked about the 28-foot radius. Could you address that, what your feelings are on that, as addressed by?
Yes, I think a 28-foot radius should do the trick in getting the single-unit box trucks to make that corner without encroaching on the other side of the driveway or having to go swing wide out into Wood Street, so that sounds acceptable.
Okay. So I believe he had agreed with everything else on the front page. I think there's only a couple of concerns on the back page, if we may. I think one was the controller cabinet, which indicates that as yet to be the city's responsibility. Is that just a suggestion to us, or?
That was a suggestion. We've had, as part of the Rourke Bridge study, quarter study, they've identified, the intersection as needing a complete upgrade, and that was one of the items as part of the complete upgrade that would be needed. It does go, it is above and beyond what's needed just for this project, but it would be nice to have.
It seems like the next one he was in favor of, and then the last one about the right turn only sign is needed. They basically weren't in agreement on that. Could you tell us basically what you feel in regards to that matter? How you feel that it will?
Yeah, that's one I would really like to see, the left turns out being prohibited, because the queuing does extend back past that driveway from the signal at peak hours. Granted, during off-peak hours, it's not as much of a concern, but then again, your site doesn't generate much traffic off-peak hours either. The site will generate its most traffic at the same time that the street also has the most traffic. So you really want to discourage people from trying to make that left turn across 2 lanes of traffic, because you've seen it in many other intersections around the city. The driver in the first lane will stop thinking he's being courteous, letting the driver out of the driveway, and the person in the left lane doesn't know what's happening. They zip by and they have a T-bone accident with the driver coming out of the driveway. I think at least if you have a no left turn sign there, if someone still tries to make a left turn out illegally, at least they would be the ones at fault there. Granted, off-peak hours, I'm sure people will try it if there's no queue blocking the driveway and it's easy enough to get out. It's not something where police will sit there and enforce the situation, but at least the sign will tell people that it shouldn't be done. And I really feel strongly that safety is a concern for that driveway there. It's just for the people who would be heading back up Westford Street. If they need to get back up Westford Street, they could take a right out onto Wood Street and take a right onto Princeton Boulevard, and get around the block that way to go back to where they're coming from. That's the only movement that would be impacted by that left turn restriction. Left turns going towards Drum Hill, they can make a left turn out of the site. They can make a right turn out of either, right turn out of that driveway or a left turn out of the other driveway. Left turns into the site, that could probably be accommodated, although most people will, if they're coming from Drum Hill, they'll continue past the intersection, take a right into the site. It's no problem to take a right in. So left turn in is not critical. I see that as more self-police, but it's that left turn out that I see as really a safety concern, and that should be prohibited.
Okay. You talked about also the applicant making a contribution, and how do you feel that figure would go towards improving some of the traffic issues that they addressed?
Yes, I know when we put the video detection in at the end of the Rourke Bridge in front of the bowling alley, the figure was close to $25,000 for that. So that would accommodate the the video detection. I don't know if we'd have enough to do the pedestrian buttons as well, though. And the pedestrian buttons are a concern. We'd really like to have a way for pedestrians to get across that intersection safely, and besides just using a crosswalk, we'd really like to have a button to stop the traffic there at the signal.
Yeah, so the pedestrian buttons would probably be the most important out of the two.
Yes, because the city will be fixing the loop detectors, so they will be operating with the detection. It's just that the video is longer lasting. You don't have to worry about the loops in the road breaking or a contractor digging up the street. So the video detection is very nice to have. But, you know, if push came to shove, if we had to have one of the two items, then the pedestrian buttons would be the one you'd want.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to say, Eric?
Let's see, just the sightlines, I'm glad that Ken addressed the sightlines at the site driveway, you know, just the trees in front of the Bowers house would probably need to be removed in order to get those sightlines. And I was just concerned that there was any other structure or way, the porch of the house will have to come down to provide those sightlines.
I think that was indicated last time, right?
Yes.
They would work with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Aaron, do you mind if I turn it back over to you now? I believe they went through everything. The only one I think they had the disagreement was on your checklist was number 6 about the sidewalks. And I think was that was mentioned by the city engineer as well. So if you could address that. I'd
Sure,
appreciate
just to
it.
provide some clarification. This comment wasn't intended to refer to a sidewalk on Wood Street adjacent to the applicant's property. This is referring to, what I'm referring to is extending the sidewalk on Westford Street. There's an existing sidewalk heading west adjacent to the adjacent property that ends essentially where the land, that narrow strip of property that was swapped with the applicant in the city. The comment is suggesting that sidewalk be continued to the intersection as it's shown in the plan from Bayview. So that's the sidewalk that I'm talking about in the comments, not along Wood Street.
Mr. Curtis and Mr. Gazan, do you want to?
Is this the one on Westford Street, the little strip of land that we're going to donate to?
Aaron, could you just point it out on the plan, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure.
That way, everybody's on board with the comment.
I think it's marked on the plan.
Yes, it's shown on the
If you
roadway
can take
section.
Bob's mic, if you don't mind taking that one for a minute, thanks. Just hit the green button.
This is the Bayside engineering plan. Basically, the comment is saying to continue the sidewalk from here all the way to the intersection, where then it would interact with the sidewalk that the city's building on the other side of the street. There would be a crosswalk with the pedestrian signal and whatnot. So the comment is just talking about this stretch right here. We're not suggesting that that a sidewalk would be constructed here, because we have a similar concern that if you build a sidewalk and just stop it, that it could cause some unintended consequences of people crossing the street in the middle of the intersection.
Not a sidewalk or pedestrian
mid-block.
button or whatever.
Exactly. So this is just the area that comment is referring to, so that there's a connection across
We don't
the
have a
street.
problem with it. We have one on the plan here from Bayside.
Okay, all right. Okay, so basically then, if I back up a little bit, now that we clarified where that sidewalk would be, we have no problem with
Yeah, there
DPD
was-
staff's comments.
A little misconception as to
No
where we
problem.
were looking, but I think we're all on a board on sidewalk on Westford Street up to the corner where the crosswalk would meet and go across Wood Street.
That would make a
would
lot
be
more
s-
sense with that
right.
pedestrian crosswalk
Yeah,
and
that's
following it
it.
down. Okay.
That's shown on the plan.
Okay. So since we addressed those and we addressed from the applicant, if the applicant doesn't have anything else to comment at this point in time, what I would do is I'd request comments from the public, and then from there, I'm sure the board will have questions of the applicant. So at this point in time, if anybody else in the public would make a statement either for or against, you state your name for the record, please, if you would, sir.
Good evening, gentlemen. David Wallace. I'm the president of the Lowell 5. The Lowell 5 is the prospective tenant of Mr. Kazanjian's at the front location. When speaking with Mr. Kazanjian, when this originated, we were saying how much the lefts are important to us. As you may know, right now, we're down in the strip mall down the road a little bit. Why we're looking at this location for 2 reasons. One, the convenience of our customer base. We understand our customer base very well. Half of them are from the Pawtucketville side, which probably won't pose any abnormal traffic behavior for those people. But the Highlands people, in particular, a very good customer base on Stedman Street, We feel that being prohibited to take a left out and get to their businesses or their residences, to get to Stedman Street and down that way, it doesn't make it as convenient for this customer base. We would petition you or urge you if you would consider lefts. I think our customer base is knowledgeable enough of the traffic situation at a particular couple hours of the day where they may go out another direction, but we are hoping that being so prohibited to disallow a left doesn't make it as convenient for this customer base. We also have a lot of, we know our customer base is quite different here. A lot of walkers, so we do enjoy that they do have the ability to use the sidewalks and the like, but we're just looking out for that customer base that heads down the other way. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else want to speak in regards to the project? Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Hi, Jane Calvin with the Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust. I would just like to ask for some clarification on items 8 through 10 in terms of what that kind of, how that will look in terms of the maintenance of the Bowers house.
Okay. Mr. Kazanjian, do you want to address that, or?
I guess I'm looking more for what the requirements, if it says, you know, require the applicant owner to provide, da-da-da-da, is there going to be a checklist? Will there be requirements for what's done over a certain period of time? I mean, the house currently has a hole in the back in the roof. The bulkhead has issues. And I'm aware that, you know, sometimes timing doesn't happen the way you want it to in terms of developing these. So, of course, we're ecstatic that it's going to stay there, and we're very excited to see what's going to happen to the house. But I would like to see the format that that's going to happen in, and so that the people that have been, those of us that have been coming to these meetings and the interested parties that have submitted letters and such for the protection of the house might be able to have something to refer to.
Thank you. I'm going to see if Mr. Kazanjian can help answer that question for you.
If this does get approved and we take the property over, we will make sure that that house is weather tight, so nothing will happen to the house. And we'll work with Steve Stoll, who is the voice of this, the Historic Board. And, you know, with his recommendations, we'll rehab the house, whatever needs to be done.
Sure, go ahead, Mr. Lockhart.
Address that, as long as we're talking about it. I did bring a copy of the Historic Board's minimum maintenance requirements, it's Article 2.2, and in that, it's very specific as to what minimum maintenance requirements are, and I'll just go through a little bit of it. It says, owners shall therefore be responsible for taking at least the minimum steps necessary to prevent the deterioration of the following items, and it has a 7 items listed here, including foundations, roofs, chimneys, architectural features, rainwater, et cetera, et cetera.
We'd love to get a copy of that.
So,
if
yeah.
that- Yeah, that'd be great.
You know, this will give you the specific guidance and answer Ms. Calvin's question about specifically what needs to be done. And of course, you know, we appreciate your willingness to work with us and
Absolutely.
make that available to you.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else want to speak in regards to the project, in favor, against? Just come to the microphone, please, and state your name and address for the record, if you would, please.
My name is Linda Harvey. I live in Pawtucketville. My question is, will you still be able to take a right from Westford Street onto Wood Street, a right on Red? Yes? Because a lot of times when you're coming down from Drum Hill, people are taking that right onto Wood Street, and they're blocking the intersection, so when the light changes for people coming from Drum Hill to go into Wood Street, the intersection gets blocked.
If I may,
Sure, go ahead, counsel.
on Westford Street, when you come down to the light at Wood Street, first there's a large sign that says do not block intersection, but that right turn will remain with traffic signals. So taking a right turn from Westford onto Wood is not going to be interrupted at all. I don't know if that was the exact question, but I was there tonight at 5:30, and there was no issue with moving from the right turn lane and making a right onto Wood Street.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Anybody else want to address the board in favor or against? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Judge. I live at 28 Fosh Street, and I also co-chair the Highlands Neighborhood Association. I'd just like this board to know that Kazanjian Enterprises did approach the association several months ago, and at that time, there were several issues and concerns that needed addressing, such as saving the oldest house, conservation issues with Brookside condos, the design of the retail building, and egress and traffic. Kazanjian Enterprises, I believe, has gone to great lengths to address all these issues and concerns that have been brought before the neighborhood and this board. I think you all know that Kazanjian Enterprise has been in the city for quite some time, and the quality of their workmanship. So I think that, yes, there is some egress problems on Wood Street, but I'm sure that that can all be worked out between the different boards and Alan. So I would like to express that the Highlands Neighborhood Association is in, we'd like to, I can't even think of the word I'm looking for, I'm lost for words. I would like this project to go through. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Judge. Appreciate it. Anybody else like to speak in regards to the board? In regards to the applicant? Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, at this point in time, I'll turn it over to any of the board members who have any questions or comments. Mr. Vashek, can I start with you?
Sure, thank you,
If you don't mind?
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman. Just so I can clarify, one of the, just with Member Lockhart had indicated he had minimum maintenance requirements in the historic board.
Yeah.
And I think Mr. Kassanian said you would be willing to follow this. Is that basically?
Alan, you want to come forward, maybe we can take a look at it before you commit yourself?
It's all,
He said yes, so let's just stop right there.
You can have a chance to look that over.
there's nothing earth-shaking here.
Jerry has some more questions as we go forward, so you can look it over and digest it as we go.
It's the detail within that, you know, we'd want to help you with.
Again,
And I just think what Ms. Calvin is trying to say is if we can at least have, if that was made a condition, then we would know exactly what the expectation was on the minimum maintenance as defined by the historic board.
Right.
And I think that's what we're looking for on that, so I'll give you time to look at that.
well, so, as soon as we close on the property, if this goes through and we close on the property, hopefully within the next 30 to 45 days after appeal periods, at that point, we're going to make sure that if we own the property, that property is going to be in good shape, and there's not going to be leaks, there's not going to be problems. But at some point in the future, and probably coinciding with the construction, that's a viable piece of property, whether it's going to be leased as an office or it's going to be turned into a home. It's going to have to be addressed. I don't know when the last time somebody lived in the property, but it definitely has some maintenance that needs to be done, and we're not by any means going to just let the property sit there. It's going to turn into an eyesore if that's the case, and it's not going to be, any benefit to anyone unless
Well, I
we
think the
get to
concern
that point.
is not through intentional neglect, but this whole project has really been built around preserving the house and understanding in an effort to make the site commercially viable. That probably be the intent is probably going to be one of the last things to be tackled on the site.
Well-
God forbid if something happens in the meantime and, you know, the house burns down or something, you know what I mean, something
I know,
happens.
I understand,
And then
but
all of a sudden,
Again,
you know.
I think, you know, that's the smallest part of the project, really, when you think about the construction. And if we have to go in there and rehab that house and
I understand
paint it
that.
and roof it, that's not a big project compared to the 2 buildings we're putting up. So I think we're not going to put up 2 brand-new buildings and have this
Right.
dilapidated house as it stands right now in that condition. We want to improve it, we want it to be an asset, and we want it to be, you know, visually and functioning at some point in the future. I know, for example, there's no sewer line that has to be tied into sewers, or we're going to be using it for any purpose, it's going to have to get tied into the sewer system. So there's a lot of issues that need to be dealt with, but again, it's been there, I think, over 200 years, and hopefully between now and the
Next to the
next
land
6
of
months, it's not
construction,
going to be struck by lightning or vandalized or any other.
But I think, again, that's the
No,
concern.
I agree with you 100%. I think that's the intention, is to really at some point have that be the centerpiece of the project. So when people drive in there, they're going to look at a nice complex, they're going to see this restored parcel that may be used as an office or for some other purpose that would work out very well to complement the entire project.
I believe I suggested that at one of our meetings, somewhere along the line, is to incorporate that into the site if that need be. And that was, and I certainly, I can see that. The other question is, and I'd like to direct to Eric, is 2 things. Just so I understand correctly, I think the applicant had indicated they'd be willing to donate $25,000 to the city for the signalization improvements, but did I hear you correctly, do you feel that that's an adequate figure to cover what's being recommended in your document here, or is, because
Based on what it cost us to do the video detection on the Rourke Bridge, I don't think the 25,000 would be enough to do the video detection and the pedestrian buttons.
okay, do we have any idea what the cost would be to take care of both?
I would have just a guess. I don't know if Ken might have more information, but.
I did, as I indicated earlier, I did speak with Keith Morgan from Electric Light, and they're the city suppliers for, and they said that the pedestrian heads would cost $2,000, $1,000 for the cable and the PED buttons, so we're looking at $3,000 for that. I asked him about the video controller and so forth, the video system, and he quoted me a cost of around $20,000.
And you were discussing with him what would be needed to address both aspects that Mr. Eby has
The video detection and the pedestrian, correct.
mentioned. Now, would there be a different price that would be provided to the city versus an independent contractor?
Oh, yeah, they definitely charge the city more.
That's kind of where I'm headed.
Union,
No.
should I say union labor? I don't, no.
Bidding process.
No, I don't know. I mean, I've done this before. I've worked with Electric Light several times, and they've come in, you know, for what the work I've asked them to do has been for municipalities. As a matter of fact, the last one I asked for was, it was a little bigger, the City of Malden intersection project I was working on some improvements for a private developer. Wanted to have countdown PED timers to replace the existing pedestrian heads. 16 countdown PED timers installed was $4,800. So I thought that was extremely reasonable cost, and my client signed the bill, and they've been installed.
Okay. I mean, I'm assuming this is a figure, obviously, we can verify from the city side, and I can't imagine it would vary too much from.
No, I can't imagine it would vary too much either.
Okay.
Just a little history on the Rourke Bridge one.
Yes.
We had Electric Lights, the one who installed it there, and they originally told us it would be 17,000. But then when we put it out to bid, the lowest bid came in at 23,000. So that's how it goes with bidding. Electric Light was not a bidder; they were just a supplier to all the
Supplier,
other
correct.
bidders.
There's another component when we start talking municipalities, unfortunately, so. Okay. And then, on the, and I have to say, I was extremely skeptical about the Wood Street egress and access to the site, but I certainly, the improvements that are being recommended, and I think agreed by Eric Eby, city's traffic engineer, is that it appears that we have a configuration that appears to work on the Wood Street side. The Westford Street, and just, on the site plan review, it's very specific what we're looking for as a body. And one of the items under 11.4.10 on the decision is maximize pedestrian and vehicular safety on the site, to the site, and egressing from the site. So obviously that's responsibility of this board to make sure that we've taken all proper steps in addressing that. And I would put to Eric again, and I know you made that clear on, and I can appreciate the tenant from Mr. Wallace from Lowell 5 indicating how that would be important for them to have that. Again, I would ask Eric, in your thoughts on this, in having a no left turn. We took great steps to minimize the even possibility of somebody being able to take a left-hand turn out of the Walgreens. It's impossible unless you destroy your car to do that. Obviously, by putting a sign, as you indicated, everybody that's driving thinks the sign is for somebody else and not for them. I guess my question is, given what you're studying of the intersection, do you think that if that was not restricted, and my concern is we don't, and I agree with what you suggested, at the very least, we've taken our responsibility here seriously and said, look, from a traffic engineering standpoint, there's a safety issue in taking a left-hand turn here. Therefore, we do not allow it. And if you do take it, you've taken that at your own risk. And obviously, you would be cited right there on the site if there was an accident by local authorities. So I guess my question to you, again, in looking at this site, what do you feel that, what would be the position of this board if we didn't restrict that?
If you didn't restrict the left turns out of the site, then you're allowing it to happen at any time, and leaving it up to the judgment of the drivers as to when it's safe to make that maneuver. I don't think it's really putting too much of a burden on people to make a left onto Wood Street and then a left at the signal. It's easier to cross one lane coming out on the Wood Street driveway rather than the two that you'd have to cross coming out onto Westford Street.
Right.
And then you have the advantage of the signal to make your left turn onto Westford Street.
Right.
So,
Just as a reminder, we were talking earlier on in the process about whether we should allow the left turn out onto Wood Street, and whether that was going to be safe and whether it was going to cause traffic problems. Now we are talking, looks to me like it's off the table. There's going to be a left turn allowed there out of Wood Street, as per your recommendations, Eric?
yes, with the current design, with the left turn lane being widened on Wood Street, that it does help to allow the left turns out onto Wood Street as well, because you have more of a gap, a median area there that you can pull out into before you're right into the next lane of traffic.
Okay.
So it does help to.
So that was an issue we had raised earlier, but now that is off the table. Okay.
All right,
Sorry,
and,
Jerry.
no, it's quite all right. And then just the few other comments. One of the other responsibilities of this board is to minimize unreasonable departure from character and materials and scale of buildings in the vicinity as viewed from public ways and places. I just want to commend the applicant and everybody involved in this to making strides in addressing that when we consider the first phases of the project. And I think it was very helpful going through the documents that we had here as far as working with DPD on the landscaping, as well as some of the other details. I'm assuming, just to clarify on Aaron's memo, item number 7 regarding the facade facing Wood Street of the commercial building, I'm assuming, just so my notes are correct here, you're willing to work with Aaron to work on some of the, well, Aaron, you won't be here, working with DPD for final details on that. I can't imagine it would be too much of a departure from what we're looking at, but I think the intention is to probably even just, Aaron, if you could elaborate a little bit more what perhaps you were looking for on the facade of the
Sure.
building.
Sure, I absolutely agree with your sentiment that there's been a lot of improvement with particularly the second commercial building that's proposed, and appreciate the effort that the applicant has put into making that property fit in the scale with the site and the neighborhood that surrounds it, particularly the site and its adjacency to the Bowers house. The comment specifically is referring to some additional improvements that we'd like to work with the applicant as far as the facade facing Wood Street and the corner of the building on Wood and facing the Bowers. So I'd like to see what's going on in essentially what is the back side of the building facing the Bowers house, thinking about material, some details at the corner so that at least the public, as traffic or people are driving by or seeing it from across the street, it doesn't appear as a blank wall. And as far as Wood Street, looking at some alternatives, it'd be nice to have more fenestration along Wood Street. It's a great way to provide depth and minimize the scale of a building. But we could also, if that's not possible, come up with ways to work with the coursework and the brick to mimic the frame of the windows as you're going across the side of the building to add dimension and depth. So that's what that comments really is working towards is the ability to continue to work with the applicant to come up with ways to just continue to work on that, particularly the Wood Street facade, and make sure that the entire width of it includes detail and dimension so that it works to minimize it, the scale of it as it's compared to the flanking buildings, which are quite a bit smaller.
Mr. Cassandra, are you willing to, I mean, I don't know if you were able to hear what Aaron was saying on that, but
We presented a elevation plan for, to the backside and also the rear of the building. There's going to be some type of clapboard, whether it's going to be hardy board or a regular clapboard. It won't be vinyl.
and I think what Aaron was looking at is possibly on the working with DPD on the back side of that building that would be facing the Bowers house. I think perhaps making that, yeah, Aaron, was that something you had seen before, or is this?
No, I guess these are the new elevations that show the side that's facing Bowers.
Yep.
And then the other side that's facing the back side of the property, so I can hand that up to the board. So this is, again.
We have it, yeah, we had
Oh,
this
you-
on
oh,
here
you do have
tonight.
it. Okay.
We saw it just tonight.
Oh, okay, all right. So, what I would say, I would just like to continue to work with the applicant on particularly the front elevation. As you can see that the windows, there's 3 window.
Yep.
That goes to the halfway side of the building, looking at ways, whether or not it's additional windows, but treatments to that wall that can kind of mimic that rhythm.
Yep.
As you kind of bring that
Similar to what we
across
did with the CVS building on Bridge Street.
Right, you can do it with the coursework.
Exact
Yeah,
same thing,
that-
yeah.
that window treatment.
We'll work on that. That's
Yeah.
not a problem, sure.
Okay,
Yep.
all right, good. Okay, good.
I'd just make a comment.
Yeah.
I did have a conversation with Steve Stoll specifically about that, and we'd like to work with you further on that detail and the materials, give you some input as to what we think is appropriate.
Okay, good, great, thank you, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Any other board members have a question? Mr. Lockhart?
Yes, I have a couple of things. The pedestrian overall, a pedestrian travel throughout the site and the safety of people, as you alluded to, Attorney Curtis, I believe you mentioned that there would be a walkway, a pedestrian walkway into the project. Is there anybody here that could kind of guide us through where that might be? I think it's an important consideration, both for the bank, there's a lot of walkers, and I want to be sure that that.
I'm going to start right here,
Okay,
wrap around to about this point right here.
but into the site.
There's a walkway coming in right from here.
All right, is that on the plan? I didn't, oh, that one, okay. Nothing further than that? To connect to another sidewalk?
There's a roadway right here, across the roadway, and there's another sidewalk right here coming into the bay.
Oh, all right, okay. Don't really see that in the plan clearly, but, all right, okay.
Am I mistaken? I thought that there was discussion earlier about a second walkway into the site at the corner that is not shown on this plan, but would be shown on a later one?
Entranceway at Wood Street and Westford Street. Just an entranceway coming in on a walk at the radius.
Yeah, we can do that, sure.
Yeah, I was talking about that earlier, and I think we discussed this prior to the meeting, that it's not on the plan, but to add a walkway entrance where you'd come across from Wood Street to the radius at the corner of Wood and Westford, you'd have an entranceway there, and also there, a walkway entrance
Oh, all right.
that would bring you in. So you wouldn't have to cross Wood Street, walk all the way down Westford to get into the project. It makes sense that where the traffic controls are and where the crosswalks are for the street, that there'll be an entrance, small entranceway there that then with striping on the pavement in the parking lot can bring you to a walkway in front of the building of the bank.
All right, that's a clear picture. Just a couple of more things. I would support Eric's recommendation that a left turnout on the Westwood Street side. I can see his concern there, and I agree with that. And lastly, got a pretty interesting project here. It involves the oldest home in Lowell. That's pretty significant in my estimation, being part of the historic board and interested in such things. And I don't want to make this a condition for approval, but would you be willing, and we have done this in other projects where we're dealing with historically significant property, to put up some kind of an historical plaque? And I'm thinking, if you go along the canal by the Wanalancet Mills, the National Park has got, they have a name for them. They're bolted into the concrete over there. That it just stands up with an elevated platform that explains the history of that particular point. I think it'd be nice to do something like that. We're not talking about a lot of money here, just,
Yeah, we can, I'm sure we can do that.
yeah, if you could
And,
work with us on that, that would be appreciated, sir.
I'm not sure if you noticed, but the project is gonna be named Bowers Crossing. We have a
Right,
sign out
yeah.
front there, so
Right.
we thought that was a nice touch.
Something along a walkway so that when people come in there, they can appreciate what the site, what's been there in the past. Good, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Boyle?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, if I can start with the traffic engineer. In the sign legend, R37R, the text reads, "Right lane must turn left." Is that supposed to be a right lane must turn right?
You caught the mistake.
You got the mistake. Okay, I was
Yes.
turning the plan around.
R3-7R is right lane must turn right, R3-7L is left lane must turn left.
Okay. Yes.
Only two.
Okay. It sounded like earlier that you and Mr. Eby were in agreement about what you can do with that radius to allow the right turns from northbound traffic into the property?
Correct. Increase it to
Okay.
28 feet.
Sounds like you are also both in agreement with planning staff about the wisdom or lack thereof of extending the sidewalk north along Wood. You don't consider that a good idea?
I don't consider it a good idea, and as a matter of fact, when I was talking with the engineering department, they said they do not want the sidewalk there because effectively it's the sidewalk to nowhere.
Okay. All right. This is probably more of a question for staff, but traffic along, for clarity's sake, I'm going to call that leg of Westford Street Drum Hill Road. Pedestrian traffic along Drum Hill Road from across Westford Street and to the project. Is there going to be, do the improvement plans call for a crosswalk there?
No.
No, that, Westford Street is very wide there, but the corner radii, it's more difficult area for pedestrians to cross. Our idea was to cross them across onto the other side, the west side, and then they can come back again on the north side of the intersection.
Okay, so the infrastructure improvements will involve putting in a marked crosswalk across Wood Street, north of Westford.
Correct.
Okay. Is that where the pedestrian entrance to the site, should that line up with that crosswalk? It would appear?
That was my thought. It would make sense to have a pedestrian connection at the end of that sidewalk.
Okay.
The ramp is.
All right. The issue about right turns on Wood Street coming in and needing the wider radius, what about right turns in from Westford Street into the Westford Street entrance? Is the radius sufficient as shown there?
You do have Westford Street is wider, and a larger vehicle could, go out in the center of the road and make that turn in, so it's not as critical at that point.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, that is what I had from on the engineering plan. This matter, it sounded, this issue with the control box, and the point attorney, I believe it was Attorney Curtis, raised that it was hit by an automobile, and therefore that should be the city's responsibility to fix. Speaking for myself here, we have existing conditions. We have a project that is going to go in and exacerbate the traffic situation there and create some new challenges in terms, opportunities, but also challenges in terms of pedestrian safety. I feel that the line of thinking that is appropriate for this board is what are the existing conditions and what needs to be done in order to achieve the goals Mr. Frechette was reading from the zoning ordinance. Regardless of when and how those existing conditions came about, we should include sufficient conditions in our approval to bring the status of the public infrastructure from existing conditions to where it should be to meet the standards set forth in the zoning. That's how I feel about that. All right, moving off of the traffic issues. The preservation work on the Bowers house. It gives me a good feeling that the applicant is pledging his commitment to taking doing that stabilization work, has taken a look at the standards, the minimum maintenance standards, and seems to be willing to work to those standards. Because of the importance of this site, this building, as well as its currently rather delicate situation in terms of being exposed in certain areas to the elements, not being far behind on its maintenance and things. I feel that we need commitment, not just to do work to bring it up to these minimum maintenance standards, but to get more specific in terms of what that work that is expected to be done is on this particular building. And I would like to see submitted and included as a condition that the applicant will follow a plan for the stabilization of the building, a plan to be developed in consultation with Steve Stoll, okay? Or as opposed to, I will bring the building up to minimum maintenance standards, but rather, I will do this to bring the building up to minimum maintenance standards. Would that be objectionable to the applicant?
It's not objectable, but it's, at this point, we don't know. We have, really haven't been through the property, and we have to first assess what needs to be done to bring it up to standards to make it, one, safe, two, keep water from going into it. But again, the building's been there for 200 years, and we're looking to do this all simultaneously with the project. We don't want to continue and complete this project, say, by next December, and have the Bowers House still sitting there with plastic on the windows and a hole in the roof. It's all going to be done simultaneously to at least get it to where, now, if we get a potential renter or someone that wants to use it as an office, there may have to be work done to lay it out. And then, again, I think the best bet is dealing with Steve Stoll. Steve, we've been dealing with the historic people for a long time on many other projects, and he's really the expert on this, and other people that are involved in restoration and how this will be restored. But it seems like, you look at the point where, well, we don't want to just let it go. We're not going to let it go. We have too much involved in this project and a lot of money involved in this project to just let the Bowers House sit there to be an eyesore. It's not going to happen. It's going to get restored, and I think you'll be very happy with it. And I don't think you're looking at years down the road. We're looking to do it all simultaneously, but I think the first step is to maintain it, make sure it's going to continue going forward, and then to restore it.
I do not doubt for a second the applicant's commitment to not having a falling down Bowers House sitting on his property. The first thing you made was that it would require you going in and assessing the building to determine what needs to be done. Yes, that is exactly what I'm talking about. I would like an assessment done with the applicant's representatives as well as people from the city, get together, figure out a work plan for what needs to be done there, put that plan together and submit it to this board so that we can include it in our decision. I don't know how the rest of the board feels about that, but I think we should. This is both an important enough and sensitive enough property that it deserves that level of oversight.
I agree with that. As chairman of the historic board, I'm very sensitive to that. And I think the applicant's word that they're willing to work with us on this project is enough for tonight. And we'll work out the timing and the details. We can't.
I think we can put together, at least an assessment once we get in there, and then sit down with the board to make a determination, or with members of the board. Again, we're not in the historic district, but we're saying the best scenario is to find out what's going on, find out what the situation is, get a list together and sit down with Steve or sit down with another member of the board to find out what can be done and go in the proper direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I believe there was some language in here about, yes, number 10. The board may wish to require any rehabilitation of the Bowers House to include coordination with the historic board prior to commencement of work on appropriate treatments regarding siding, roofing, windows, doors, masonry. I believe that that plan should be submitted and approved by this board prior to any work beginning on the site whatsoever. If not, during the application process itself. Mr. Sedgwick?
Yes, we have plans of, like you said, assessing the building, and we're not going to leave that building not weather tight. We'll make it weather tight. Nothing's going to happen to the building, and as we're working on the project and the commercial buildings, we'll be doing work on that building also. And we'll work with Steve Stoll, who we've already worked with, and had him up there at least 2 or 3 times, directly with Steve, who's the voice of the historic board.
Excellent.
And I might just add, we can draw on, we've done this in the past too, the National Park personnel. Their architect, Chuck Parrott, who's a real expert and nationally known and regarded as such, to look at that and to give you some input.
It's fine.
It's there. It's just gonna take time to work out those details.
Alan, do you still have that checklist that Mr. Lockhart gave you for the Historic Board, Article 2.20, minimum maintenance that you had there?
I do.
Can you take a look at that, please?
If you wanna
'Cause maybe if that,
read it, maybe-
if it addresses more of it, then, I mean, if that's the minimum maintenance, I mean,
It's all basic things that we're talking about. I mean, not
when you're
leaving,
done with that, can you give it to us? I'll pass it along to board members and
Okay.
see if, it seems like you have no problem doing that, correct? My understanding, sure. Yeah. So do we know with a minimum, you'd be safeguarded by doing at least this, right? Okay.
Might add, I've been told that there's minimum maintenance standards that are part of the health code that are citywide. These are specific to properties in historic districts, but they would apply, just this criteria would apply.
I mean,
to ours.
this going back to the 2.2 as indicated by Mr. Lockhart for the minimum maintenance. Owners of the building should provide sufficient maintenance to keep such buildings from falling into a state of poor repair. The provision shall apply to exterior portions of such structures as are regulated by this act in the downtown historic district. Also, to the interior portions which, if not adequately maintained, would tend to cause the exterior portions to deteriorate or become damaged. Owners shall therefore be responsible for taking at least the minimum steps necessary to prevent deterioration of the following items, which could cause either an unsafe condition or detrimental effect upon the charter of the historic district, or which could lead to a later claim that deterioration has become so advanced that demolition or removal of the architectural features is necessary. And that is to keep the foundations, exterior walls, vertical supports, roofs, and other horizontal structures, joints, beams, etc., chimneys, chimney support system, architectural features, including but not limited to windows, doors, trim, and roof crests and cornices, rainwater drainage system, gutters, downpours, whether exterior or interior, waterproofing systems, roofing, flashing, windows, doors, paint on wooden or metallic surfaces, and any other element which is not adequately maintained would eventually cause the building to crack, bulge, sag, rot, crumble, or collapse and whole or in part. So that's what you're referring to for 2.2, right? Which you've agreed to do to the historic.
that's correct. And we'll be doing some work right away as far as taking the porch down. Everybody's on board with that. And so we will be doing some work to the house right away. And if there's anything that will cause any deterioration on the house, we'll rectify that right away.
Yep. And that establishes a set of standards. What I'm talking about is a work plan that specifies what would need to be done to the building in order to make sure it's meeting those standards, just to make sure there's a meeting of the minds between the city side and the developer side about what exactly the expectations are for it. Wouldn't want to come into a situation where the applicant thinks he needs to do, A, B, and C, and he is done with that, and discovers after the fact the city was actually expecting D and E to be done as well. I want to make sure, I think it might be wise to get that out in writing beforehand, so that everybody's expectations are clear.
We'll be working, like I said, we're working with Steve Stoll right away, and Steve's not letting anything happen to that building. So I'm sure if Steve sees something wrong with it, he's going to let us know, and he's also going to let the city know. So we will be working with the city hand in hand on that.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'm harping on this because I do feel that the preservation of the building is this important that it deserves this much attention from this board as this project is put together and brought forward. When we review a traditional subdivision application, there's a certain amount of work that is expected of the applicant in order to build the road and make sure that the road is built to the city standards. And in that process, there is built in a couple of different methods of performance guarantees. There is the phasing of work. You may not build lots 4, 5, and 6 until you have completed this much of the road. Or there is the bonding route. Because of the importance of this site, and because of the importance of considering history, I believe we should work in some sort of performance guarantee into our decision on this, whether it is work phasing, the building is brought up to the minimum maintenance standards before X, Y, or Z is done as part of the project, or alternately, a bond can be posted to ensure that the building, that would cover the work necessary to bring the project up to the building up to minimum maintenance standards. You had mentioned, Mr. Kazanjian, that you intend the building restoration work to be one of the very first things done on the project?
On the Bowers House?
Yeah.
No, it's not one of the
No,
first
I'm
things.
sorry, not restoration work. The stabilization work.
Would be one of the first things, yes.
One of the first things. Okay, so it is your intention to get that work done early in the project before you go on to other work, some other phases
We'll
of
be
work?
doing them simultaneously.
Okay. Would you be willing to commit to that in writing as some sort of a performance guarantee? That you do the stabilization?
We
work?
don't have a problem putting it in writing. I mean, we're gonna be working on the house if it needs work. Like I said, we'll be sitting down, we'll be talking to Steve Stoll. Steve will meet us up there, like he's done a couple of times. And whatever work has to be done, we'll take care of it to make that house weather tight.
Excellent. Aaron, is there some way that in terms of a work phasing performance guarantee, somewhat similar to a subdivision process, could be worked into our decision? The maintenance work will be done before, we don't have lots to release, but what could that look like? Kind of putting you on the spot here.
No, that's fine. As you pointed out, this is different than a subdivision where you can hold lots from being sold based on performance of, typically for subdivisions, building out of the street and infrastructure. There have been cases where we've had subdivisions for commercial projects that aren't being sold, where there's leased structures as part of that. What you could do, probably the easiest thing in this case would be to place a condition on approval of the site plan approval that the minimum maintenance or the stabilization, whatever you want to call it, be identified and performed prior to whether it's a building permit or a certificate of occupancy being issued for the new structures. And the certificate of occupancy would be probably a more reasonable timeline than a building permit. But in that way, it can be completed at the same time as the new structures are built. The minimum maintenance work can be completed at the same time.
Okay.
Just to add one point, we're going to be doing site work. We're going to need to clear the site, and one of the aspects is the porch on the Bowers house needs to come down. So when we're working with Steve or other members of the Historic Commission to go out there to know that that porch needs to come down, then that portion of the house and the rest of the house needs to be stabilized. There's also a retaining wall there that's going to have to be replaced and stabilized. So there's a lot of work to be done at the outset before we even put foundations in the ground for the new buildings that is directly associated with the Bowers house. And it's a pretty major portion to take that porch off and then put that to a point where it's restored. Now, whether the inside of the house at some point will get restored at a later date, but it has to be made weather tight. I think once we have Steve and other members of the board that we can have a list of how this should be approached, because you don't want to do any damage to the house. That porch has probably been in there for 50 years, maybe longer, and needs to be done in a delicate manner, not to disturb the rest of the house and also that retaining wall. So immediately, we're going to be working on the Bowers house, probably before other construction is commenced, and hopefully we can do it simultaneously. But as I said in the beginning, the Bowers house is the main thrust of, I know, what we want to have as a showpiece, but it's a small aspect of the total construction. I mean, the bank building and the other building are large construction items compared to rehabilitating and restoring of the Bowers house. But we need to make sure that it is secure, that it is sure, the foundation is good, that anything that needs to be addressed inside with the structural is worked on. And then at some point, in the same process of the development, if we're going to be using that as some sort of retail, maybe an office, it's going to have extensive work done inside, and hopefully that will be done in a manner that the historic board or historic member, Steve Stoll, guides us. So I think we're on the right track, and I think the work, as you said, I think your concern is that we don't just neglect the Bowers House and leave it there for a year the way it sits and it doesn't get completed. It's going to get completed almost simultaneously and maybe even sooner than the rest of the project in some regards, because we need to do that for the sight lines for the porch to come down.
So it sounds like what I'm hearing is it's your intention to get that building stabilized to minimum maintenance standards early in the project anyway, and the inclusion of some sort of work phasing performance guarantee in writing would not really be an interference with what you're already planning to do.
I don't think so. I mean, we have certain criteria we have to meet if we're dealing with the bank. They want to be, they want to see a construction schedule. They have a construction schedule. They want to know when they want to be open and running. They have a location down the street where they have to vacate from. So I don't want this board giving us a ultimatum that says, unless the Bowers House is completely restored, you can't get an occupancy permit for the other buildings. That's not the way we're looking at it. We're looking at this as one complete project, but part of it is the work that needs to be done to the Bowers House right at the outset, taking the porch off, making sure it's stabilized, making sure the roof is good, making sure that the foundation is shored up. We have to put a retaining wall in, and all that is going to be right at the outset.
Okay.
So we have no problem putting that in writing. I just don't want it held over our heads saying, well, you can't get an occupancy for the Lowell 5 on their bank building until the Bowers House has new windows put in it. I mean, we want to do this properly, but we also understand what the situation is with regards to the entire project.
Yes, and just in case I misspoke earlier, the work I'm talking about doing is getting the building stabilized and brought up to minimum maintenance
Fine.
standards, not the restoration
We have
of
no
the building.
problem
I
with
understand that's a later part of the project, and I'm not suggesting we put that up front. Okay,
We have no problem doing that.
all right. Planning staff, you are satisfied with the erosion control plan on the latest plan set?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. The January 2nd memo included an item, the drainage and utility plan, sheet 4, shows storm water lines running from under the trench drain located at Westford Street and access drive to the oil and grit separator. This is item number 8 on the January 2nd, as well as item number 7. It was locations of underground utilities, and they might interfere, and they're underneath the landscaping and could be interfered with the trees. I'm not entirely clear. Are those conditions now satisfied in the latest plan set?
So one of them's clearly addressed, the trench drain that is at the access to Wood Street. The drain line is redirected to the infiltration chamber on the north side of the parking lot, whereas before it was directed to the south side and was running along that landscape area. So that problem has been solved.
Okay.
The other issue that was discussed in a meeting with the applicant last week was that the drain lines, the sewer line that's going to the manhole in the landscape island is deep and shouldn't cause a problem for locating landscape trees. Correct me if I'm wrong with that, but that was based on our discussion. Those two elements there's still infrastructure and utility that's in that location, but there's space to plant the number of trees that was discussed in my latest set of comments. I mean, it can be laid out to accommodate those.
Excellent. The latest plan set, does it show the locations of water and sewer to all of the buildings to the city engineer's satisfaction?
I wouldn't want to speak on their behalf, but they've seen the plans and I haven't received any comment back from them with concerns
Okay.
about its location.
Would you expect to receive comments back from them expressing their approval?
At this point, usually, if there's any ongoing issues that still need to be raised from particularly the city engineers department, they would provide that, but they would still work off the original set of comments, so that I wouldn't expect anything to come in that
Okay, so.
raises concerns.
So
Yeah,
this is,
the main concern originally with regard to sewer was that there's no sewer line in Wood Street, and the existing house, the Bowers house, is not connected to a sewer line. It's going to be connected now, and it's going to go across the site to the line in Westford Street. So that's been addressed. That primary issue's been addressed.
excellent. Okay, yes, yes. The additions to the design of the retail building, were those worked out through meetings with the DPD, or is that the applicant coming in with his design?
A little bit of both. I mean, we've had conversation about what elements can be added to the south-facing property to try to minimize the scale of it because of its length. And the dormers were added, which I think add quite a bit of improvement to that side in particular. So we've had minimal discussion, but there's been a lot of back and forth, and the applicant seems willing to work with the building to make sure that it fits with the scale of the building, the surrounding buildings.
Okay. At a basic level, brick as a facade, is that appropriate and desirable on the site, given the character of the Bowers house as a clapboard house?
Given that the building has different materials as you move up the facade, it's got clapboard at the peak. I think it's good. To mix up the material on the facade, it makes a lot of sense, particularly with window fenestration. That also adds a lot of dimension. It's a big enough building that to have it all clapboard would be too much. It would feel very big. It'd feel large from the street, and it would overpower the other two buildings.
Nice, okay. Makes sense. The bank building, that second story, is that real space? Or is that a false second story?
I believe it's only one-story building, Zach. One story is false.
Okay, okay. And same with the retail building, it's just a high ceiling retail?
Correct, one story, yeah.
Okay. All right. All right, that's all I have right now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Will. Mr. Melovich?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't at the November 18th meeting, so I did watch the entire meeting on TV. And the project then and the project now is substantially much better. I think it's come a long way. I do have a couple of questions, though. I do agree that the left-hand turn from Westford into the site shouldn't happen. I understand the safety factor, and I think I agree with that wholeheartedly. The only other question I have is the new building, new commercial building, the so-called rear or the Bowers house facade facing the Bowers house. Is that going to be a utilitarian facade, or is it going to be more active than that? What I mean is it's not going to be the back door to this building, is it?
It's going to be clapboard with some service doors going into it's pretty much the back of the building.
Okay, but it can't be dressed up so the Bowers house isn't facing on the back door of a building. You know what I mean? It's people having storage, and it's got to be a little bit, have more facade activity than just being a blank back door of the sites.
I'm sure we can try to do something, maybe possibly put some windows or something.
Yeah, it's
And then
something, it can be fake windows,
Okay.
as long as
Okay,
it doesn't look like the back of a building.
we'll sit down with our architect and see if we can design
Because you
something.
also have some parking there too.
Okay.
And there is no access from that parking to the front of the building. I don't know whether there's going to be a sidewalk along the east facade.
He's referring to,
Right there.
is that sidewalk?
Is there going to be a sidewalk there?
Oh, there, around the building,
It seems like a long walk for someone to park in the only space available over by the Bowes house, and
It is a sidewalk, yes.
you're gonna have one there. That's paving, right?
I believe so,
Yeah, there's no landscape, is that maybe the landscaping, I don't know.
landscape plan
Let me pull that out. Which sheet was that? With the big device. Here we go. They will- Okay, yeah, he's showing a couple of trees in that triangle.
So it's,
And, that's a planting area.
Planting area right there.
I guess that's my only concern, is if someone, how does someone get to the other side of the building if they're parking way over there? They may not use that, but it's just, they're gonna have to walk in the paved area. That's no big deal, just a question. Other than that, I have no problems with this development as it's proposed at this point, except for the traffic issue that I had mentioned.
Sorry. Breaking the equipment already. The question of the turn lane, I think everybody here is in, their thoughts are that taking a left turn out onto Westford Street is probably not a good idea. But I think coming in, so if we were to leave the sign, no left turn going out onto Westford Street, but coming in, if someone was to come down from Drum Hill, turn onto Westford, if they need to make a left turn into the site, we would like that ability. I think the bank needs that to be able to make that left turn in on Westford Street. I don't think it's going to be that often because they can come down Wood Street and take a right into the building. But we really need that left turn in. It's 2 lanes of traffic, and, I think it's feasible that could work. Even better. I feel like I'm on The Voice. Okay. Anyway, so I in making a point to that comment, I think the project can live without a left turn going out onto Westford Street. Again, safety is the main concern. We have our left and right coming out onto Wood, and if you come on to Westford, once in a while, you may have somebody making a left turn into the project at that point. I think that could work all the way around. So hopefully that can be part of the board's decision. Thank you.
Having said that, just my comments, I'll start with Eric on that. Eric, what do you have concerns with coming down Westford and taking a left in there? Or, I know we addressed coming out would be the other way, but going in on Westford Street?
A left turn in is more acceptable. My only concern is that you do have a large radius there on that right turn, and sometimes people can take it at a fairly high speed. And if someone stopped, waiting to make a left turn in, it could pose a hazard. But, I think most people would be it's going to be easier to take a right turn into the site from Wood Street rather than taking that left.
Because,
Yeah, clearly.
would Westford Street be wide enough for one car to be taking a turn with the other car to continue towards downtown, correct? Do you think?
I believe, Ken mentioned that when he was making his presentation, that there was some width.
Yeah, it is.
I know it's wide, but I can't tell you how wide it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, the whole width of the road is pretty wide right there
Well,
with the
Westford
two
Street, right,
lanes.
because I think it's wider than narrows down once you get by the building on the left there, the supply company.
That's correct.
Right there, then it starts to narrow down before you get to Stedman. So it's wider to start, and then it narrows down once you get by County Supply there.
Correct.
It narrows down, then it stays narrow by
Past
Stedman
the
Street.
bus stop.
Right, by the bus stop, and everything else, it's okay. All right. So to follow up on that, I wouldn't have a project on turning in on Westford Street. As indicated, I do agree with Ms. Eby about that right-hand turn lane coming out. I think, it's one of the important issues about the safety situation, and, by putting a sign there, I don't think it's a deal breaker. I think it, as it comes to us, under the site plan, if we have a concern of safety issue that's brought to us by a traffic engineer, and we overlook that, then basically as board members, we're kind of derelict in our duties on that. That's something that we really can be turned over on very quickly. In regards to the other parts of the project, I agree with everybody else. I believe it's come a long way. I think the applicant has worked very well with staff over a period of the months that we've been here. Obviously, a lot of thought and consideration went into saving the Bowers House. I know that was your original plan to begin with, and you changed the plan upon recommendation by staff. And then after the public hearing, the interest comes up about saving it, moving it, and everything else, and we all know how expensive that would be and everything else. So went back to the drawing board to say keep it, and then we worked with the how you could address keeping Westford Street okay with the traffic there. That seems to have worked out. I know you have the wetlands in the background where Black Brook has been. I know you've got approval from the conservation, and I've been informed by staff earlier tonight that you did get the land swap with the city, so I was happy to see that. I think itself, the project is going to be a good project. I'm glad to see that you want to do the sidewalk coming down Westford Street, because it makes it easier on that turn, and I agree you don't really need it heading down towards Wood Street. So if we break down the comments from all the boards, I think the ones we have from Aaron, after we talked about that sidewalk, and he said it was on Westford Street, there's been no problem. So basically, the applicant was in agreement of all of those concerns. On the traffic engineer, once they talked about that 28-foot radius being changed, with both traffic engineers agreed that was a go. The only other one was that right-hand turn. Then the question came in is whether by fixing the existing cabinet, and I can understand both arguments on that. And I see with the city engineer, you agreed with all what's going to happen there. I mean, it's beneficial what the city's going to do to help the other side of the street compared to what you're going to do. And I totally understand on one contractor doing it all at once instead of piecemealing it side by side. So therefore, and I think for the Bowers House, I understand what you're totally saying about the maintenance agreement there, and I know you're going to be working on that simultaneously, what's on the plan. I'm comfortable that you're going to be working with the historic board, and how you said, you agree with the minimum maintenance requirement. I know that's going to change as you get in there. As Attorney Curtis says, once you bring the porch down, you want to make sure that that structure is secure. So I think it's come a long way, but I think, the main thing with that turn, I have to agree with Mr. Eby on that myself. But besides that, I think really that's the only main issue that we have a problem, and it really comes down to signage. I mean, if people want to get to the site, I think they're going to get to the site. So I don't think that's got a deal breaker, in my own opinion. But I think everything else, obviously the donation of the money to work for the video thing and the pedestrian button. I think the pedestrian button is the most important thing, so hopefully if you did that first, I think that's the pedestrian safety access that's most important in the area. I think I had a couple other comments here.
Hope to coordinate all of that traffic work with the city. I think the plan is this spring that's going to start, and that's going to be a vast improvement,
Right.
what the
I agree
city's
with
going to be doing, and along with, we'll be doing it at the same time, or coordinating that. you're gonna see a huge change in that whole intersection, and that's a major intersection,
It is.
the Westford, Wood Street intersection.
Yeah, and I mean, because as we talked about, we had the big project, with the Walgreens and the Rourke Bridge, and, when we looked at all the traffic analysis, of course, they went all the way up this street, all the way up to Drum Hill, all the way down the other side. I'm sure you can, and all the way up, the other project you had on Princeton Boulevard heading up that way, you can adjust everything. I mean, the main thing, a temporary bridge, and I can remember when that temporary bridge was built. I mean, that was 20-plus years ago when I was still on the planning, when I was on the planning board back then. And it's probably maybe another 20 years till we finally get it. I know Jerry's been on the board about trying to figure out when they're gonna maybe start work on that, and they're still talking 5 years minimum. So, but besides that, I think the improvements are very good. And the only, I'm in favor of the project was, just that's the main thing what Mr. Eby said about that turn. I think, put signage there. It's not gonna hurt your project. I think it's gonna help for the safety. Obviously, if there is a traffic accident there, people have a problem getting in and out of there, it's gonna affect the business, the bank. People have a hard time getting in and out of there. I mean, it's like when we have improved shopping malls and market baskets, if there's a problem with the circulation, they stop doing it. For example, when we approved the expansion of Market Basket on the bottom of Clark Road, and when the exit's coming out, it was too close to the set of lights going onto Roger Street. We suggest maybe move it back, but I said no. So when you come out, you take a right, there's only enough for 8 cars. After about a year, Mr. DeMulla says, we have to push that whole intersection back. Now it goes back 30 cars. They realized that people getting stuck there and they didn't like it. So over time, they went back and went along with what our recommendation was by trial and error. And I think that would be the same process that would happen there. If people have a hard time getting in and out, they might just go to another bank. And I'm sure Mr. Wallace doesn't want that.
Yeah.
So I think, by putting a sign there, if you have good customers, for good clientele, then they'll still come to your project. And obviously, people up in the Highlands, with most of his consideration, what he indicated, they know how to do the loop around, no problem, and stay safety, and, it's still close within their neighborhood, and I think it'd still be a successful project, so. Those are any comments I have at this time. I don't know if the board has any further follow-up.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Fischett, I'll start with you.
if I may, just trying to keep straight what we were in agreement with and what the areas that maybe not so much. On the Mr. Eby's memo of the 22nd, the bullet item regarding the signal controller cabinet that was damaged, any idea what the cost of that would be? Eric?
No, generally, when they put a new cabinet in, they put everything in they wire it up in the shop, and then just install it in place. And here, all the equipment inside is still good. It would be a difficult process to switch it out to put it into the cabinet, so I don't know what the cost on that would be.
So you see that as a significant cost?
If you put a whole new cabinet in, including all the guts inside of it, you're talking another $25,000 for that.
And now, I believe Mr. Kane had mentioned that, did the city, in a case like that, is there any insurance? I mean, if an auto, or can you file under the?
If you know who hit it, you can go
It's
after
not a
their
hit and
insurance.
run.
You gotta know who hit
It
it.
would
And they-
probably
yeah, they didn't
could
stick
collect
around and
property
leave their name and
damage. That'd be a
address.
property damage claim, but unfortunately, we'd have to do some investigating to see if there was a claim made. But
Yeah.
I think the number's correct. If you had to replace that whole cabinet with the internals, you're talking $25,000 or more. And that's just cost prohibitive too. I mean, if we want to work with the city to improve that and improve the safety. It is functioning there. Hopefully, it's going to function for a while, but maybe there's some way that the city can go after a specific insurance company that is involved with that. I don't know.
Okay, well, yeah, that's a significant cost, okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other board members have any follow-up comments?
I had a very similar question about the cabinet. Does the city know what needs to be done at that cabinet yet?
As far as fixing the
Yes, as far as fixing it. Do they know if it's going to need a whole new cabinet to be installed, or if it's just going to need to be repaired, or?
No, I didn't look into the details of it, but that our city electrician, was someone who mentioned to me that the cabinet has been hit and bent, and is difficult to access. But he says he can live with it the way it is for now. Getting video detection is a higher priority for him. That's the more maintenance item in the future.
Okay. Okay, so we're not talking about the need to install a new cabinet, a new control cabinet. We're talking about the need to fix the existing one.
Yes.
Okay.
Everything inside it is working fine right now. It's just the box around it has been damaged.
Yes, you please.
Clarification on that. So what would the cost to fix the box around it be?
I don't know.
Okay.
But not 25,000.
No, I'm assuming they can take everything out and put it into a new cabinet. You know, it would be, I would imagine, less than 25,000. I just don't know what that figure would be.
Okay. Eric, are you happy with the dumpsters and how they're how they're accessed now? On your January 2nd memo, one of your items was how will the dumpsters be serviced? There does not appear to be room to maneuver a trash truck in the area around the dumpsters.
We did move the containers areas.
Okay.
Yeah, they've been turned so the truck can get to them now rather than facing the narrow part. They're facing the longer part of the aisle so the truck can get easier access to them.
Okay.
Eric, just a follow-up on that. So, for the money that they're willing to donate, part of it, with the minimum part, would be the pedestrian button, and then you talked about the video. With that video, would you still need the cabinet if you use the video? Do they both work individually? You need both, or does one supersede the other?
Well, the video detection equipment, the controller for it goes inside the cabinet along with the rest of the equipment that's already there.
Okay, I got you.
There's still room inside the cabinet for more equipment.
I got you. So that goes in the cabinet?
Yes, there's the detector, the camera out above the intersection, and then it has a module inside.
The module's inside, so, okay.
Yeah.
So the video out there goes into the module?
Goes into the cabinet, yeah, and you put hooks up to the controller.
Okay, so the two of them are significant to work hand in hand?
Yes.
I didn't know if one supersedes the other. Okay. Any of the board members have any questions, any follow-ups? If not, I think we can entertain a motion one way or another.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, site plan approval with the following conditions. Referencing the January 22nd, 2014 memo from Aaron Clausen. Item number 3, the SWPPP, Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, submitted to the city engineer, needs to be submitted. Second, item number 4, signage requiring some kind of monument type signage, and to work with the planners on getting the right type of signage for that site. The sight lines from the Wood Street driveway need to be put on the plan. I know you have a partial plan, but it needs to be put on a full set and approved by our traffic engineer, Mr. Eby. The walkways that you pointed out, for the pedestrian walkways that you pointed out and access into the project itself, they should be depicted on a drawing so that they can be clearly understood where they are.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lockhart, with the siren, I didn't hear that last one.
Pedestrian walkways on site to be shown on plan as they indicated?
They should be shown on the plan as they were indicated up on the screen there.
Okay.
I think we're in agreement that the left turn out onto Westwood Street should be eliminated. And you'll work with the historic board on really 2 things. The minimum maintenance standards, we'd love to work with you on that and really get this buttoned up, as well as the facade improvements on the commercial building, both the backside and the Wood Street frontage. And lastly, I think that's the last one, What?
The landscaping plan?
Oh, and the landscaping plan, yes, right. And the last condition, and I think I've covered them all. And I want to put this in a question form to see if this is fair to you guys from a construction standpoint, from a timeline standpoint. And I'm asking this because, you know, you start site work there and you're not sure what you could do to a 200-year-old house by disturbing the land. Is this condition fair to you? Before site work commences, the Bowers house should be evaluated structurally and, you know, architecturally so that you can see what the needs are there before other site work begins in earnest. Is that a reasonable request?
I'd rather not have it in there. We'll be careful and we don't really have much work close to the Bowers house itself.
Yeah, okay, I mean, we're very sensitive.
Other than putting some parking and some landscaping, there's no really deep digging there that's gonna affect any type of the structure.
Yeah, okay. All right, I'm willing to take that out. I'm confident that the applicant will.
Two other things I'd add would be to work with the signage and accept the 25 grand.
Oh, yeah, you go ahead.
Okay, the only amendment I would add to that would be, if it's acceptable to the motion of the maker, would be to accept the donation for the traffic improvement by the applicant for the $25,000. And also was indicated that they would work with, you know, as you mentioned, the landscaping plan as well as the signage plan with DPD.
Yes, that's acceptable.
Okay. Any of the board members have any follow-up comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just a moment.
So we do have a motion made with conditions.
I would move to amend the conditions to include the following. Prior to the issuance of occupancy permits for any building on the site, what's Steve Stowe's title?
Administrator.
The Historic Board Administrator shall certify to the board that the Bowers House has been stabilized to the minimum maintenance standards.
Was that part of what you made the motion on? To
I thought he had
Richard said for them to meet the minimum maintenance standards by the Historic Board, and to work with the Historic Board on that, so.
Yes, to work with, and what I'm adding is a work phase element to that. Prior to the issuance of occupancy permits, Steve shall satisfy that the work has been done.
I really don't think that's necessary. Okay. If they agree to work with the historic people, believe me, it'll get done right. But, that's all.
Yeah, anybody else have any comments? Or anything else? Do you have any comments, Bob? I know they addressed most of your concerns, so.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second the original conditions of the approval.
Okay, so just to back up, to make sure everybody's on the same page, was basically the motion was made by Mr. Lockhart for approval of the site plan, to go along with the recommendations made by Mr. Clausen on his memo that was dated January 22nd. And I believe most of it is indicated earlier, a lot of it was the landscaping plan. I believe, Alan, those are like the last 5 checklists,
Right.
which you had no problem with. The signage plan you had no problem with. The sidewalk, we clarified that. That was an issue at first, but that was done. And you indicated that you would go for that, the stormwater pollution preservation permit that you need. And, the landscape, talked about the trees again, that's all in there together. So I believe that was all there. Then he made the motion to have the sign there for the no left turn coming out of Westford Street. Work with the historic board with the minimum maintenance requirement, work with Steve Stoll with the historic board. Accept the $25,000 donation for traffic improvement. I think the only thing we didn't hold you to was fixing the cabinet.
The sightline drawings.
And the sightline drawings as well, that you approved that. I think your traffic engineer was indicated he would work with Eric on that sightline that he had a preliminary on. So, is there any questions on any of that, Mr. Kazanjian, on Mr. Curtis? On,
No, I just think, hopefully we can coordinate with the city with regards to the $25,000 to improve that. We know that, that's being used. We want this video system
right, yeah.
in place, and that's probably the biggest cost, and the push buttons for the
The way I understand, the
crosswalks.
push buttons are the cheapest of the group, right? I mean,
Right, but I think both together, they could easily amount to the $25,000 that we're talking about. And I think those are the two most important issues regarding the traffic. The striping is not a big issue.
right.
City's going to be doing a lot of striping, and we'll be complementing that striping with what we need to do. I'm sure they're going to be putting crosswalk striping down, and they'll be putting curbing in, so all the cost of all the curbing installed is going to be the city's
I know
cost.
the city's gonna put the granite curbing in, which is
Yeah.
a nice
Right,
fixture.
that's a
It's,
nice, that's a,
you know,
yeah, we know how
usually for
expensive
development, they
that
don't want
is.
to put that in, but once it's there, it's nice. I mean, you know it's staying there, it's not moving.
This is, again, we've gone through this process now for 3 months, and, we all know that whole area and what a great improvement this board did with regards to the Walgreens matter and how long that took. And, the market basket has been there for a long time, and eventually that's probably going to get revamped, if I know anything about it. And this is going to be the real gem of that whole area coming in. You have two real nice buildings. You got the Bowers House being restored, and it's the first entranceway coming into that area, and it's really going to be a nice project with, the landscaping and the way it's set up, and I think it's going to be a vast improvement, and the roadway is going to be a vast improvement, which is sorely needed down there in the last 20 years. So I really appreciate the board's input, and I know it's taken some time, but that's the process, and we're willing to abide by it.
I mean, it's indicated that, even at first, I remember, coming down Westford Street, going down to Wood, there was big questions and concern on that, and we weren't sure how that was gonna phase out, and that could have been a deal breaker. I mean, and then, so then coming down to working out with Eric and everything else, I mean, for the sign there, I mean, it's not a deal breaker with that. That could have been up there, that was a concern of mine at one point. I thought, is that gonna make it or not? Because that was probably the biggest challenge you had, and, I mean, the sight lines, that's, as most lawyers say, you can deal with the engineering stuff. Just, like, when we used to have some Arthur Hammer there, say, let the engineers work it out, the lawyers can just give us a speech and let the engineers work it out.
That's right.
Okay, so back it up, we have all those, did the motion for approval, motion made and second with those conditions. So motion made and second, all in favor, say aye.
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick.
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Is there, in that list of conditions, does that include working with DPD on the planting and landscape plan?
Yep,
That is in
which
there.
covered the landscaping plan, he also covered the signage
The
plan.
signage, okay.
Yep.
And signage.
And which included the trees and the plantings and everything
All that
else.
stuff.
Right.
Okay. Before I can vote, I have a question for staff. Is tonight the first time you're hearing the number 25,000 for mitigation funds?
From the applicant?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So you have not looked at whether, you have not yet had time to consider whether that will cover the cost of the pedestrian improvements that you feel necessary to mitigate the impacts of the project and provide safe pedestrian access? You've just heard this for the first time now.
Yeah,
Correct.
that's correct.
Okay. Hearing that, fellow board members, I do not feel confident that we can vote on and approve a plan that accepts that level of mitigation for pedestrian improvements and feel confident that that provides sufficient, that we are providing sufficient pedestrian safety and access to the site and providing sufficient mitigation for the additional pedestrian impacts potentially created by the project on the site. I feel that it would be beneficial to allow some more time for consideration of what those pedestrian impacts and mitigation should be.
Mr. Chairman, may I just suggest, I think we know what we've got 3 memos, one with 15 items, the other one with 7 items, and then from the engineers department. I think we've determined what is needed. I think perhaps if we could add some flexibility in the condition that, the traffic engineer through working with the engineers department would determine the adequacy of the 25,000, subject to cost verification for this board to approve. So at least, I mean, I don't know what the variance could be, but I think, you know, as far as it's been laid out, what needs to be done, the applicant has determined through some investigation a figure of 25,000. I think you made a valid point, is in the past, we've actually been able to verify either through our engineers department or our traffic firm what the costs are. So I guess, I mean, with that, Aaron, does that make sense if we have, I mean, obviously they come back with 30,000, we have to come back with, you know, some concern, or if it's 35,000 or it's 45,000.
Well, the other item is this, you know, if it's gonna cost the city $50,000, but we can do it for $25,000, bottom line is we wanna have the video system put in place.
Right.
It may be better to have the applicant hold the $25,000 and
have it done.
be responsible for the video system, rather than being worried about this bid going out to somebody and all of a sudden the price
Absolutely.
skyrockets and we get stuck with the cost.
So if we could find out, and then we could come back, that's what I'm saying, and then we could come back and say, rather than giving that to the city, then we make it a condition that you would, then you would pay for the improvements. You would actually do the improvements as part of the conditions.
List the improvements instead of a dollar figure?
Oh, we'd like to put a cap, some type of cap on it. We don't think it's gonna be any more, but,
I'm trying to work out a solution that.
Right, we are too. I mean, we thought the 25,000 was a pretty good number.
I mean, that's a valid point that Mr. Boyle makes, I have to say. I mean, that is a valid point.
If I could make a recommendation, Mr. Frichette.
Sure.
What we've done in the past is actually itemized the agreed upon items that will provide adequate mitigation tonight. I think it's been pretty clear. It's pretty much everything except for the cabinet.
Right.
And they can be itemized as conditions, whereas it's by choice at the applicant, whether they implement them themselves or make a contribution equal to that. So they'll have a choice to, if there becomes an issue where it's costly from their perspective for the city to do it because for whatever reason, the RFP process elevates the cost that much, they would have the choice to make the implementation on their own. So that we're actually itemizing the projects that they either implement them or work with the city to identify a cost where they can gift the city the amount, one or the other.
Right. I mean, I think if we could build that flexibility into it, and then we would come back if it was a case where, I think we're all agreed, these things have to be addressed as part of the project, and if it is cost prohibitive to do it through the city, and then it would make much more sense to have the developer do it, then that's fine. I would hate if we get the 25,000, find out it's gonna take $50,000 for the city to do it, and they can't implement the changes, and you're going forward with the project. That's not gonna do us any good either.
Well, what we like to do is, if you want to put a condition on it, to maybe put a cap of 30,000 on it, we'd be willing to do something like that.
Well, I like what was suggested, is why don't we, I think as a condition is that we would get cost estimates for the agreed upon changes, and then evaluate the adequacy of the 25 or capping it at 30, and if in fact that is not enough, and it's going to create a financial burden on the city to pay for the difference, perhaps as a private contractor where you can get the work done for the 25 or 30,000, then the condition would be that you would implement those changes.
Are we, as a private contractor, able to do work on a city lights and?
I believe that's correct.
Consented to by the,
That's correct.
consented to by the city, correct?
That's my understanding, yes. Yes, yeah.
So, I mean, it could be like, we could, if we made the motion, either you fix it, or you willing to You know, I mean, if you can fix it cheaper, it'd make more sense to everybody, right?
If we can,
Do it cheaper in the city, makes more sense.
yeah, we'd like to do that.
Because you'd rather give them less money if you can fix
Might
it
be
for
able to
less.
do it for $20,000, but, you know,
Right.
once we know what the city's looking for, and we know what the city's contribution is gonna be, because they're out there putting in the pads in the ground, and I don't know if they're, part of their plan is to put in new lighting at that location, if they're putting in new traffic signals, I don't know. But the video system that
No, there's
they
no
talk
new
about,
traffic signal.
those are, you know, items that we certainly can get a price on, and possibly we can get a better price than what the city is dealing with.
So, oh,
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if it might be beneficial to recess for a few minutes and allow the staff to put together a list, exactly what the items that should be included in this condition are.
I don't need a recess. I know what the items are. It's basically everything that's in the memo provided by Mr. Eby, except for the cabinet.
Okay.
yep, yep.
So, would it be easier if we did the motion to either accept the $30,000 and/or let the applicant complete the work if necessary? Or do you think we'll expend above and beyond that? Or is that too hard to say at this point in time?
Too hard to say at this time. I mean, as far as, you know, if conduit is needed for pedestrian signals or how they're hooked up, you know, the extent of work that's required for them.
But I think, Aaron, do you have the verbiage on that? I think we've built the flexibility into that condition.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, I think.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
I mean, I'm comfortable with that as,
What was the condition again?
So, can we go back and amend the 25 then?
Yeah.
And put in the verbiage, put the verbiage, Jerry, that you're speaking of, so everybody's on board on that then. So for all the, we have all those, we have all the conditions approved and seconded, and now we're discussing about the 25 and having the applicant either fix it. So why don't you go back and suggest what that condition was again, and we'll see how that flies.
so just to make sure we're in agreement, Aaron, is what would happen is that the city's traffic engineer would determine the adequacy of the $25,000, $30,000, we'll go to the 30 already, the $30,000 donation by the applicant in order to address the revisions in your memo of January 22nd as approved by the board, and if the funds are not adequate for the city to move forward with the implementation of the recommended changes, that the developer would, as a condition of the approval, would be responsible to implement the changes.
Well, can we have an opportunity to do the work if it's going to be cheaper?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
that's
yes.
going to be in there also?
Correct,
Okay,
yes.
all right, great.
That's acceptable? Then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
And then if that's a sticking point in the future, if there's not a, then just come back to us. You know, we'll make the final determination on it. You know, if it can
We're
be,
pretty specific on what Aaron had listed in the agreement as to what we're looking at. We're looking at a crosswalk with the control buttons, and also this
Yeah.
video system for the Westford and the Wood Street intersection with Westford
Correct,
Street.
correct.
That's basically it. The city's doing a lot of other work.
That is
Putting
correct.
sensor pads in the
Yep.
ground. This is just a few specific things.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
We'll have our traffic engineer, Ken Cram, work with Eric, and this way here we can
Okay,
make sure everybody's on the same page.
all right, good.
so then we back up, so we have the motion, and now we have an amendment to the motion that Mr. Fischett has made. Do you accept the amendment that made by Mr. Fischett?
Yes.
Okay, so we're back, we have the original motion and now amended in regards to the traffic situation with the donation to the city and/or the applicant working it out. So we have a motion made and as to the amendment, and so he accepts the motion. You're going to second that again on your own motion?
Second
Okay,
motion, yep.
so motion made and second, so all in favor of the site plan approval with the amended recommendations, say aye.
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 Chair votes yes. Any opposition? Hearing none, the site plan is approved with the outlined conditions. Thank you very much and good luck.
Okay, great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you need your checklist back for the minimum maintenance plan?
I got it right here.
Okay, all right. Thank you. And that bidding process, huh? Alan. Wait for Rich, so I'll pick him up at the end here. AC. Once Rich gets back. Okay, moving along on the agenda, we have any general correspondences, any notices from any of the board members on any of the boards, other boards that they sit on? Any new notifications?
Mr. Chairman, I have some information. The Green Building Commission is being reorganized into a Sustainability Commission, which will be sort of a steering committee for committees. And there will be, you know, a solid waste commission, an energy commission, as well as other commissions which aren't necessarily strictly about sustainability issues, but might come across sustainability matters in the implementation of their missions. And they will have representation on there too. And the idea here is that the Green Building Commission is to a large extent a victim of its own success. Its real push was to get the stretch code implemented, and it succeeded. And it has sort of been looking for new missions since then. And this is the direction that both the Commission and the city manager decided would be the most productive, is to, you know, not have it bogged down to specifically this, but to deal with sustainability in a broad way and look at multiple issues, as well as promote connections between different bodies which themselves have to deal with sustainability.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else, any follow-up, anything, Mitch, Mr.
Yeah, I just want to address that minimum maintenance issue. We talked a lot about that tonight, and we have been really looking into minimum maintenance standards in the historic districts and discussing it a lot and how to apply it and how to enforce it. And we actually had our first, without going into any details on the case, we had our first case of demolition by neglect. Okay? Person wanted to tear something down, and if you want to tear something down or build something in an historic district, you have to come before the board. And it was really interesting. My point is we're really looking at this closely without getting into any detail.
So somebody letting it deteriorate so long, it
Yeah,
almost
for
benefits them.
whatever reason, and then coming and saying, Jesus, this is detracting from my property and bringing property values down, I gotta tear it down. Well, it's not that easy, you know. You gotta come before the board and prove yourself.
So instead of letting the maintenance go to favor yourself to tear it down.
Right.
You have an
Right, and that's
obligation to
why-
maintain it.
Yeah, that's why those maintenance standards are there, and you'll be hearing more about it, for sure.
Anybody else have any follow-up? No? Aaron, do you have anything following up for the board coming out down the way? No?
No, there's nothing at this point that I really have. That I think there will be some projects coming on board
Not on
soon.
your radar screen?
What's that?
Not on your radar screen?
Yeah, right.
You had mentioned one out, Gorham Street, Rivers, up by,
By River's Edge, that one
River's Edge,
they withdrew. Yeah,
Okay.
they withdrew.
did,
They-
Yeah, because that was supposed to be coming in kind of soon, right? Would have been coming in?
It would have been next meeting, yeah, and I think they realized that there was too much going on the site. It's challenging. It's a narrow it was a narrow property with wetlands, so that they withdrew. They decided not to bring anything forward. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything that's coming before the planning board in the near term. I think 430 Broadway will be a planning board special permit. It's currently owned by CTI, still owned by CTI. We'll be proposing 3 additional residential units in the building. At one time, it was the ground floor. They had offices there. It's been vacant for a while, so they'll be proposing 3 additional. I think it's a net increase of 2 units, but because it's 3, it's a special permit in the urban mixed use by planning board approval. So that will be coming probably the second meeting in February.
What's 430 Broadway?
It's a mill building, or I shouldn't say mill building, it's a manufacturing building. As you're heading out of town on Brightway, it's on your left, just before you get to, there's the paint store there, and then Stocklosa School after it on the left.
Oh, yeah.
So it's it's a brick manufacturing building.
Yes.
It's been converted for some time now, but they'll be adding additional residential units.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, so moving along on the old and new business, I guess under both, I want to take this opportunity at this point in time to thank Aaron Clausen for all the hard work he's done with us here on the planning board, that assisting us on a daily basis, and especially me calling him all the time on a regular basis. I mean daily basis most of the time. But I know Aaron's been with us for, how many years has it been now, Aaron?
Just over 6.
How long?
6 years.
Wow.
6 years,
Now.
yeah.
And I know you accepted a job in Beverly, and I believe your last day with us is tomorrow? And you
Yeah,
start there on
that's
Monday?
correct. Yeah.
So
I had to get one more planning board meeting in.
Yeah, okay. So I want to wish you the best, and it's been a pleasure working with you, and I really want to thank you for all your hard work and wish you very well. And our loss of the city of Lowell is the gain of the town of Beverly. So I want to thank you very much and appreciate all your hard work you've done for us. So,
Thank you, I appreciate
any other
that.
board members want to chime in on that, and personal thoughts?
Yeah, ditto. It's always been a pleasure to work with you, Aaron, and the information you've given us has always been thorough and right on, as far as,
Thank you.
you know,
And I think, Mr. Chairman, just to build on that too, I think people see what happened here at the board, but reaching out to Aaron when we have technical questions and looking at projects have been extremely helpful. And again, it's one of those things where I don't know if the residents of the city of Lowell really fully understand what goes into some of this, and the amount of talent that's come through DPD, and you're going to be in a long list of talented people that have come through the department and have gone on to bigger and better things. But again, thank you for your service here.
Thank you all. I appreciate that. I just to return the compliment. It's been a learning experience for me. All of you and many of you have been very inquisitive, asking hard questions both during meetings and prior to meetings, and I appreciate that. It makes for a more interesting job for me. It's more challenging, but also I've learned a lot here over the last 6 years working with you, and I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the well wishes, and I know you'll be in good hands going forward. I'm confident in that.
So can we call you in Beverly if we need you? As long as
Let's
there's
see,
something in
maybe
the past that you worked on.
2 or 3 month maybe grace period, sure.
I hear you, so. But then again, thank you very much. We appreciate all your efforts. And like you say, a lot of times we don't, like, just simplifying some of the questions that I asked them at a meeting and getting that direct answer. And I know you're always prepared, and it's a pleasure seeing you when you're here with us. So again, thank you very much. Appreciate it. So if we have anything further, if not, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion is made and second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We have adjourned. Good night, and thank you, everyone. We're working right up to the end, huh?